And just to confirm, so well, I think we're live actually. Okay.
Perfect.
Alrighty. So I believe yes. Okay, wait, hold on. Alrighty, good evening, good morning to everybody all around the world tuning in. And my name is Zoe Sazzle. We are here with another film talk from the Africa Film Festival Trinidad and Tobago. This is one of quite a number of series that we've been having some chatbacks after the films with the filmmakers to get more perspective and to get an even deeper insight. So tonight we have with us the very, very special Coreon Du. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. And Coreon is the director of Bangalogia. Did I say it correctly?
Bangalogia, yeah.
Bangalogia. There we go. The science of style. So welcome. We recently tonight a little earlier we would have screened the film, and so a lot of our viewers are curious just to get some more perspective. So for our viewers that don't know, Coreon Du is a creative extraordinaire. You are a musician, a designer, filmmaker, one of the prominent leading forefront influencers in Africa according to Forbes magazine.
Oh, thank you.
So we're so grateful to have this incredible film as part of the festival, and I wanted to ask, being such a multifaceted creative, what was your creative process like on this film in particular?
This film was actually quite interesting because the inspiration of it was actually born from a previous previous work that I was researching, because I love doing what I consider contemporary anthropology. Because unfortunately, when a lot of people talk about African culture, people always think about the ancestral, but they don't think about the here and now. How the ancestral informed what we're doing now. And while I was doing my dissertation project, which was a documentary about house parties, especially backyard parties in Angola, and how the culture of Semba and Kizomba and our music and dance performativity is very much linked into how we interact in the home party setting. And these discussions kept coming up about style and the importance of style. And funny enough, when I was doing I Love Kuduro from Angola to the World, which is a documentary inspired by the I Love Kuduro documentary that I started almost a decade ago, the same conversation was starting. People were saying, great, yes, music, dance, but style is important. Presentation is important. And this was around the time that I noticed that a lot of, especially visual art and fashion platforms, were starting to focus not only on the traditionally African-inspired works of Western or Asian artists, but also things made by African creators specifically. And I thought it was very interesting that I saw that it was starting becoming trendified internationally outside the African realm, that people were all of a sudden interested in the African point of view in terms of creativity, in terms of style. And that's how I became interested in delving into why is it that now in these particular decades that the creations of African creatives, especially in fashion and art, are becoming so relevant.
So hey, Coreon. So while Zoe's coming back,
Oh, sorry. I think I may have lost your sound.
Oh no, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right. So while Zoe's coming back, talk to me about, your context as a filmmaker coming from Angola, which, I actually hold pretty personally dear to my heart because of the music and the dance and the place it's from and all of that stuff. And how did that, make its way into your filmmaking practices, I guess?
Well, that's quite interesting because I was born in Angola. I left Angola when I was 8 years old because of we had a long-standing historical, not only civil war, but regional war. So much so that, the African liberation, kind of Southern African Liberation War, Angola was part of it, along with Namibia, South Africa, etc. as well. So it was a long process. I actually grew up outside of Angola, but with Angolan and African culture very present in my household because I was raised in a very Angolan environment and also Ivorian, as my stepfather's family was from Cote d'Ivoire. So it's interesting that I grew up primarily in the United States and also partly in Europe, but also with the very present identity of myself feeling and being Angolan and being African in particular, by extended family. After university, I actually made the conscious decision to move back to Angola. This was in 2006, because at the end of the day, it's very interesting that although most of my life I spent outside of my own country, I felt that my identity has always been that. Although I have learned from being in other places. At the end of the day, it's very strange. I don't really feel anything other than Angolan, and I think particularly because I did grow up abroad. One of my first interests was actually getting reacquainted with my country. I started doing a lot of exploration, a lot of traveling, not only in my own city but also, all around the country. Because again, I had a lot of catching up to do. So indeed, I do believe that being Angolan and being African, and I would say especially because I grew up with a little bit of of southern Central African culture and a little bit of Western African culture. I think being African is definitely a very important part of my identity and how I express myself creatively, because I think you can see it in all my work at the end of the day.
Yeah. Cool, man. Over to you, Zoe.
Yeah, sorry about that. The internet plays its games on us.
No worries.
So I'm glad to be able to have picked back up in there. And actually, this is a great lead into one of the questions that I wanted to ask, which is, for me, I had my own perspective, but I wanted to ask, how do you feel like what do you feel is the role of language in film, Bangologia? I'll tell you what I found out, but I'm curious. What for you? What's
visual language, auditive language? Which one specifically?
The use of Portuguese, yeah, and the Angolan. I guess not just Portuguese, but the Angolan tongue, more specifically.
Yeah. So I used various, obviously, because Angolan Portuguese, which is something that people forget, Angolan Portuguese is actually a language in of itself.
Okay.
Because although there are various, I would say, dialects of the Portuguese language, Angolan Portuguese is its own entity, which I think many times both Angolans kind of tend to shy away from because of the colonial baggage that it comes with. And then people from abroad also, even other Portuguese speakers, kind of tend to negate so much that they say, oh, no, it's a European thing. It's really not, because there's so much African influence of the various regional languages of Angola in Angolan Portuguese that, funny enough, Angolan Portuguese is now actually influencing the Portuguese language in other places. There are words from Kimbundu and Umbundu, etc., that are part of the Angolan vernacular that are now commonplace in Portugal, in Mozambique, in Brazil, etc. So the use of language, and the reason I used especially because obviously not everyone that was in the film that spoke Portuguese was Angolan. Like, for example, Armando Cabral was from Guinea-Bissau. But language is important. And since I was trying to capture, obviously, not only the culture of Angola, but regional, because let's not forget the other languages that are represented, like Kikongo, like Chokwe, the language of the Muhimba, the Mukubal, etc., are actually languages that extend far beyond the Angolan territory. There are languages and language groups that are quite prevalent so particularly between the central and southern Africa, especially, because I did indeed, although my focus, me being Angolan and also for budgetary reasons and logistics, my focus was doing in Angola. I wanted to do it in a way that was regionally representative, because some of the cultures that you see there are also in Namibia. They're also in Zambia. They're also in Congo, and beyond. So I think that's also the beauty of when you work in any African countries, how diverse we are, and how sometimes some of our cultures are cross-cultural between borders.
Yes.
So I think that's also why, that's part of the reason why not only did I include Portuguese for those who are Portuguese speaking, but also the other regional languages, because they are actually representative not just of Angola but of our region in a way. And I did want people to be able to connect with that, because when I am saying African, I don't mean Angolan. I do mean African. Yes, I couldn't go to all 54 countries, but at least I got a little bit of the microcosm of how diverse each of our countries is.
Yeah, and for me, even the finesse of the Portuguese added so much of a layer, even to the definition of banga. Like when, like just even hearing it being spoken by some of the different people and seeing the way they for themselves embody banga, was so great. Even to me, it added another layer of definition to the word, to the philosophy. That was beyond the visual language that now turned into the auditory language. So I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah. And I'm curious, what is your definition, after having done all this research and explored, and even, in what you spoke about earlier, your connection to coming back home to Angola, now what would you say is your definition of banga?
Well, the funny thing is, so when I was younger and I heard the word banga, I myself also identified it with something visual. But the interesting thing that I've discovered is that banga is it's very tangible but very intangible at the same time, because banga does not really mean style. It's the essence of someone's style. So it is what is behind someone's style. So your banga could be visual. It could be the way you dress. It could be the way you walk. It could be the way you cook. It's actually something that makes you essentially you, which is, I think, what I found the most interesting about describing, not only describing but discovering a little bit more about it, because it's such a commonly used word, and it's interesting that I've always heard it in my life used not only about someone's look but about their attitude. Because in Angola, you like sometimes when someone is, I don't know, someone is being, I think,
spicy.
Not spicy, but like when someone is being very themselves.
Okay.
Like you always say, oh yeah, you're showing your banga.
Okay.
Kind of. And obviously, yes, some people do use visual apparatuses for that, but some people, for example, such as the Shunos, he's a spoken word artist and a fashion designer who did the intro of the film. He actually uses the way he talks a lot to accentuate his personal style, because that's the thing. Everyone has banga. Everyone has style. Everyone has their personal style, and there's an essence behind that. So that essence is banga, and then it's translated into various, I would say, creative languages.
Right. I love that, and I think the film captured that so quintessentially. And exactly what you're referring to about the spoken word artists, that their monologue was what began the film. When the film began, I was like, oh my gosh, we're off. Wait, I wasn't ready, and it was such a clear communication of the fact that, yes, you're going to learn about a visual language, but beyond the visual language, there's something here that is way more than, so that's such a great insight. And I'm curious, you would have set out on this journey to have this conversation with so many of different people in different sectors and different representations of life about banga. But I'm curious about something unexpected that you may have learned after having so many conversations with such a cross section of people and seeking out, a certain aim. But I'm sure some other things might have come up that weren't things that you sought out from the beginning. I'm curious about this.
Well, it's very interesting because since I really do enjoy the documentary filmmaking process, particularly when they do allow me to discover things that I've not. Like for instance, which is quite interesting. So part of my family is actually from Uige in the north of Angola, which borders the Congo. But I had never been there. It's like I've kind of lived that as part of my identity, but it was the first time that I was there. And one of the things that I loved, with Chief Dundee when I was there was uh, how pretty much like he's like, okay, great, you belong here. He did like a welcoming, which he was saying, you are back to like where you come from, in a way, which was very especially because particularly in our region of Africa, I think the matrilineal side of things is very important, and my mother's mother is from there. So although my other side of the family, comes from somewhere from other places, they're like, no, you come back to where like you are from originally, because like that is where my mother's mother is from. Right. Which was quite interesting because, in almost 30 years of life, I had not had the opportunity of going there or spending as much time there as I could. And the way in which I was welcome is like, obviously I'm Angolan, so I'm from there as well, but the way in which I was welcome was very special indeed. And interestingly enough, in other, which I found amazing, is that I have done other field work, but the level of hospitality that I encounter whenever I'm doing projects like this always amazes me, because there is a certain amount of ritual and reverence, but the fact that I think a lot of communities in my own country understand that what I'm really trying to do is to capture and showcase our story, and the fact that that is actually appreciated, and that I'm met with a lot of hospitality for that reason, for being there, but also for that reason is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating because even, and it would be great even to get a little more insight about, in Trinidad, we have a unique rapport with seeing ourselves, whereby there are only few contexts in which we can really, really appreciate seeing ourselves, but it sounds like your experience in the different communities that you visited was very different. It sounds like they already have an inherent self-appreciation and awareness of how special what's going on is.
Yeah, it is. And the amazing thing is, like, it was very diverse and very different, because I found it very intriguing that I was able to speak to a lot of differing personalities, and by personalities I mean even cultural personalities, because a lot of the like particularly when I got to the South, and it was all warrior tribes who are traditionally like warrior and herding tribes, that although that tradition is not really there, but the attitude of the warrior, you could feel the warrior thing.
Right.
There's a very like guarded alertness that people exude there, whereas in other places they exude a different energy. I think that this is the first time that I actually was able to feel that so present, but maybe because since I was trying to capture the essence of what each style is, I was actually able to see and feel those details, maybe in a way that I think were a little bit, since a lot of the times when I was there before, sometimes I was just in places of Angola as a tourist, it was kind of second nature. I wasn't really like dissecting and analyzing all of these things.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, and having such a different perspective, awareness, appreciation of it in that time is a great detail that definitely came through. One of the other questions I wanted to ask you was, in your opinion, where is the Banga capital? Banga capital of the world?
There's quite a few. I think there's a lot around the world. But right now, like I would say, like I could name, I think, some of my favorites.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Well, Luanda obviously would be one of them. Right. Kinshasa, of course. Yes. And let me see. Probably say Seoul, Korea.
Seoul, Korea. Wow. What a great stretch.
Yeah.
I love that. Alrighty. So, well, tell us, anything else that you may want to share with us about the film, and beyond the film. I'm also curious as to what you are up to now in your
Yes.
career, in your creative, pursuits.
Well, obviously, we're in a very interesting time. I think we're all kind of rediscovering ourselves and trying to find ways to stay busy.
Yeah.
One thing that has been keeping me particularly busy has been my work, not only in fashion,
Mm-hmm.
but also in production, which is quite interesting because I'm still actively, well, primarily right now, like promoting and still working with talent because
Right.
10 years ago I started working as a talent scout,
Okay.
and I'm very pleased and fortunate to be able to launch careers and give opportunities to African talent,
Right.
especially from African talent from the Portuguese speaking African countries, because we are a minority within Africa,
Right.
linguistically speaking, and sometimes we tend to be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Although we do share things in common with other regions, like sometimes people are like, we're an afterthought. And a lot of my work, I don't know, tends to be how can we connect, actually, not only internally, like intra Africa, but also connect to the world to make sure that we are also seen. And
Yeah.
fortunately, through my work as a model scout, I've been able to do that because there's a wealth of talent that luckily I was able to connect with the right players in the market. And now they're making us all proud.
Yeah.
So and
Yeah.
I was very happy that towards the end of last year, when a lot of the fashion industry started reopening slowly, a lot of them were able to still work.
Right.
So I'm still actively, although I'm doing online scouting now, I'm still actively doing that. I'm still producing content, actually, because a lot of the work that I do is mainly commercial. It's actually mainly commercial TV work,
Mm-hmm.
which is I think the day to day for most creators in Africa.
Right.
Is TV and advertising. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on as well. Fortunately, although remotely, trying to produce and direct like things remotely.
Yeah.
And other than that, just trying to stay busy and pay attention to opportunities to learn, because the world has changed, and the way that we create
Mm-hmm.
and that we engage with the audience also has to adapt to the new reality.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Wow, well, I think we've had such a rich chat tonight. We were able to cover so many various aspects of the film, and get your insight. And I know we wanted to kind of keep it in the 30-minute range. So I think my producers are letting me know we're just about ready to wrap up. But I want to say it's been such a pleasure being able to feature this film, and also to give it such another platform. I found it so enriching as I was viewing it, and it was such a expansion of self. Being from the Caribbean, Caribbean people carry within them their own sense of banga.
No, for sure. And I'm not sure you're aware of how much Caribbean culture actually influences contemporary culture. Well, in places like Angola, in many ways, especially music. Caribbean music has been a very present influence, I think, in the past 50 years of Angolan music, especially.
Right. Okay. Wow. That's a great connection. And as we were speaking about, earlier, banga not just being an expression in visual, but really
Yeah.
the essence of, I think music is definitely one of the vehicles in which essence is really captured, and to know that there is that cross cultural communication happening, that's been happening for so many years, from Zouk to Compa, and all the Angolan music that is also reflected back in our Caribbean music. So, Coreon, it's been such a great pleasure
Thank
chatting
you.
with you. We want to
Thank you
remind
so
people
much.
at home that they can still watch the film on africafilmtt.com. It's still up and available until tomorrow. So you still have the opportunity to watch it. And Coreon, we're going to be staying in touch with all of your creative
Thank you
endeavors
so
of
much.
excellence. And we're looking forward to much more that comes from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having Bangologia, and I'm really, really looking forward to more connection. And I just want to remind everyone that obviously the film will be available here for all for people who want to rewatch it afterwards. It's also available on Quelly TV.
Okay. Okay, great. That's great to know. Great, great, great. Well, thank you so much. And to our viewers at home, thanks for joining us. This was another Talk Back. And I'm going to pass on to Shay, because she is the one that's going to wrap us out. So thank you once again, and good night to everybody at home. See you tomorrow night. Bye.